welcome to RWB Sports. This is 36 Minutes to Victory with my guy who you've seen us here with several times before, talking about the legendary, the Hall of Famer, Marshall Kauffman. And today we want to talk to someone that's inside the sport. We know that boxing has been around for generations, but yet it seems as though that the athlete of today has veered away from the athletes of yesterday, from the way me and he came up through the sport, and some of the greats that came before us, like Marciano and Cuss and all those guys. So we want to get into the nitty gritty, and I wanted to talk to someone who is not only been in the sport, but who is now a director of the sport. He puts on shows, he trains fighters, he's trained and worked with some of the greats, even his own son, Kauffman, Travis, who I wish was here so he could give some insight. So we're going to go ahead and get started on today. And first of all, I want to say, Marshall, thank you very much for taking time out.
Thank you, Reggie. I don't know whether to look at you, look at the camera, but we're good.
So I want to go ahead and get into it. I took the liberty of sitting down and doing a little research on King's Promotions. And I've always said, and I've said it in other interviews, of what King stands for. For those who haven't seen it, or for those that are just now catching on, let the viewers know, let the fans know what King stands for and how it all came about.
Sure. Well, my ultimate passion when I started this journey of boxing, or this lifestyle, I should say, it started with opening up a gym. And the reason for me opening up a gym was for no other reason except for getting inner city kids off the streets. And so getting inner city kids off the streets meant having an acronym, and that acronym was Kids in Need of Guidance, because I felt like there were a lot of local kids in our community that needed guidance.
Right.
Okay? And I felt with my history, with my background, with my my story, my testimony, I could give some input to kids that needed some guidance.
Right.
And so I felt like I could help guide them to going down the path that I didn't go down. I didn't want them to go down the path I went down, because I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and because of that, that challenged me, but it made me who I am today.
Right.
By the grace of God. But it also allowed me to have that passion for wanting to change lives.
Right. And speaking of that, because we come from that same era, that same cloth, and we know that.
Are you saying that we're old?
You can say that. You can, if we can't tell them, the gray hair will definitely show. That.
That's for sure.
You put the time in, and you took your life lessons and turned them into a career. Now, going from a fighter, from a trainer, and training, guys like, who do we got here? We got Steve Little, and we got Julian Letterlow, and all the way to Kermit Cintron, who you've taken all the way to World Championship. How did being as a trainer, as a fighter to a trainer, and now a promoter, how did that help you in the promoting side of the business?
Well, I think it helped tremendously. It helped. If you look in today's world of promoters, I don't think the only one that you can name that was a boxer was probably Jake Paul. And Jake Paul was a YouTuber that became a boxer.
Right.
He wasn't truly a boxer that had passion. But there's really no other promoters out there that on the larger level. Oscar De La Hoya, okay, who was a boxer. But then how many of them were also trainers?
Right.
None.
None. Yeah.
And so I felt it gives me an edge. It gives me an edge in, at least in my opinion, in knowing the different talents that I see in fighters.
Right.
If you think of some of the fighters that I've had and I've brought up, say over the last 5 years, okay, I've had Michael Fox. Well, let's go over the last 10 years, okay. I'll start with Kermit Cintron. I've had Julian Letterlow, as you mentioned. I worked with Steve Little, and that was even longer than 10 years ago. But Steve Little was a personal friend, and I was around him as he became world champion, and I worked with him in those regards. And then I also worked with, in the last 10 years, you got Kermit Cintron, you got Tarvis Sims, you got Rob Calloway, who was number 4 in the world as a cruiserweight. It's Hasim Rahman,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I worked with some of the best.
Right.
Some of the best of the best, you know,
Yes.
and guys who were, without a doubt, some of the most feared fighters in the world. You mentioned Kermit Cintron. In Kermit Cintron's prime, he was the most feared fighter in the world.
Yeah, he could
You
crack.
know, he could, yeah.
Yeah, he
was-
could crack.
Without a doubt. Hasim Rahman was one of the biggest punchers in the heavyweight division.
Right.
You know, that's another one. I love punchers. Then, you know, Rob Calloway was someone that not many people knew because he was from St. Joe's, Missouri, but he went from not even being on the map to being number 4 in the world.
Right.
You know, and so those were some of the things, some of the input I had in those lives of those fighters. And then I had of you know, the fighters like the Michael Foxes, the Keenan Collins, the Raisa Leem, okay,
Right.
who is the number 1 mandatory, who's fighting for a world title May 9th now. You know, I had the Raisa Leems. Then, you know, you can go even a little further to the Alicia Baumgartners, you know.
Who just fought.
Who just fought.
A hell of a fight.
And I took her to an undisputed world championship, you
Right.
know. So, so not everybody can say that about themselves. In those terms, yeah, I'm not the top rank, I'm not the matchrooms, I'm not the golden boy, but what I've and what I've impacted with what little I have,
Right.
was volume. It spoke volume.
Right.
And then of today, I got a Tifo Burlington, probably, you know, without a doubt, top 5 light heavyweight in the world.
Get ready to be
Okay.
a world champion.
Without a doubt, and that's because of the eye, the talent that I saw, and I knew he would be.
Right.
Then I have the Yuri Cedenios,
Right.
who is probably the top 5 in the world as a middleweight. You
Right.
know, so those are some of the athletes I have. Then I have what I'm doing with. I took Stephanie Hahn in such a short time from 4-0 to 10-0 to becoming WBA world champion. Then I took Danielle Perkins from scratch to world championship at light heavyweight.
Right.
You know, so you know the list goes on. Next should be Brittany Sims and everything else. But those are the journeys that I've taken, and part of it, what I can say that's given me that edge is because I was also a fighter, because I was a trainer, and now a promoter.
Right.
So I've seen those different levels, and I've worked with some of the best fighters in the world.
Right, and that's one of the things that's going to bring me to my next question for you, is because you have that eye, because you've been around the sport that long. When you look at fighters today opposed to fighters yesterday, let's just say you go to a boxing match and you look at a fighter, an amateur match even, and you look at a fighter and you look and you're like, hey, that fighter right there is going to be a world champion. What is an immediate sign that will tell you, because I know you said you like punchers, I'm the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I like somebody with heavy hands, bricks in both hands.
Correct.
So what will tell you about looking at a fighter that, you know, that they're going to be a world champion?
Well, it's hard to say that they're going to be a world champion, but let me say this: they have the ability, they have all the tools to become a world champion.
Right.
You don't really know that fighter until you know the fighter. You don't know what their outside life is, what their distractions are, what their home life is like.
Right.
Whether they get motivated by the nightlife, whether they're motivated by those things, or they're motivated by just being the best they can be.
Right.
So those are the things that are some of the obstacles in the way. But when I look at a fighter and I see that they're focused in that ring, and that they have a good punch, they know how to defend themselves, and they have a gas tank to go along with it. Those are some of the signs that tell me that they have what it takes to become a world champion.
Right. Now let me ask you this about work ethic, because I know we talked about this a little bit off camera. Fighters today opposed to fighters when we came up, and like I said, some of the older fighters and their work ethic in the gym. What do you think about fighters' work ethic today? Because what I find is, and what I see, of course, a lot of social media has a lot of influence on that. You see a lot of fighters now that they come to the gym and the first thing they ask, are we sparring today? Or, coach, are we working mitts today? You don't see very many fighters want to put the grind in like we used to of hitting the heavy bag, because a lot of your power and all that stuff comes from hitting the heavy bag. It doesn't come from, being flashy and cute on the hand pads. It comes from being out there in the field. Like I tell people all the time, it's like you can go to the gym and lift weights, but yet you can go out there and grab an axe or a post hole digger and, dig, 2 or 3 acres worth of post holes.
And still get that physical workout.
And still get that physical workout. So what do you think about that? What do you think about the difference in fighters today opposed to yesterday?
But, I mean, put it this way. Me personally, if I had a choice of going digging holes or lifting weights, get me in the weight room.
Right.
I'd
That's
rather do
now.
that
But
all
that's
day.
now, though.
Yeah.
That's now, though, Marshall.
I'd rather do that all day long. But
Let's take you back to 20.
But, I think what they did back in the day, they made the best of what they had, because let's face it, there wasn't all those fancy machines. There wasn't the weight rooms. There wasn't the technology to say, hey, let's do this or that. Let's swim. Let's do box jumps. Let's do, let's run sprints in the field. Because now, even look at the physical fitness rooms, the gyms.
Yes.
Some of these gyms have natural turf that they can exercise on as well.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that have transpired over the years to make it, in all honesty, to make it easier for the athlete.
Right.
In my opinion, okay? Because like I said, if I'm that athlete, I'd rather get in the gym and run the field instead of going out and running some, in some yard and digging some holes and flipping a tire or chopping trees down.
Right.
The heck with that, But that's what they had to do for their physical strength.
Right.
Okay, back in the day. So that says a lot right there. But I think a lot of athletes today are, I mean, let's be real, they're spoiled.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, because I was going to intervene there for a second and say, yeah, at my age now, yeah, I want to go to the gym, because I want the comfort. I want the air conditioning,
You're right about that.
And that's what kids and fighters have gotten used to nowadays. But back when I was in my 20s, and the way that my trainer, Donnie Broadway, explained it to me is that, when you're doing natural weights, or you got post holes, or you running heels, or you lifting rocks and things like that, it's more to it than just using that specific muscle. All right, because when you use weights, you use a specific muscle. You either use a push muscle or a pull muscle. But when you're out there and you lifting rocks, or you cutting trees, or you doing this, you having to balance as well as lift. So you have to focus on more than just, pushing and pulling. You gotta, concentrate on, okay, I gotta hold this way so I don't tip over, or you gotta hold it. So you're using a lot more muscles than you would if you was just pushing and pulling.
So true.
And so that's why I feel that me, myself, old school, is always gonna go and refer to, the old school way of training.
Well, just like running, okay? You're running, you can run those hills, you can run on the road, and the thing that you're doing, you're building cardio, but you're working your legs, right?
Yes, correct.
You're not working your upper body.
No.
Okay? Swimming, on the other hand, you jump in that pool, you're working your total body.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And you're still working your lungs.
Yes, sir.
So swimming is something that's lost among a lot of athletes as well. A lot of boxers, I should say, because that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Who are athletes, but swimming is a very important technique.
I agree.
And a lot of trainers, okay, new school trainers, forget about that, They say, oh, we gotta go run, we're gonna run the pagoda, we're gonna do it. But in order to be a great trainer, you also have to have an imagination, okay?
Yes.
And you have to be creative.
Yes.
And so, with an imagination becomes creativity. But in order to do that, you have to put a fighter in the swimming pool. You have to do things like that. And especially if they have a leg injury or a foot injury or things of that sort, do something different. If they have a hand injury, they can't hit the bags no more. Do things that are different so that they can still work out. Some coaches would say, oh, we can't work out because they hurt their leg. No, you can still work out.
Right.
Or we can't work out because they hurt their hand. No, you can still work out.
Yes.
There's a number of things to do. I'll give you an example. and that's one thing I loved about Kermit Cintron. Kermit was an athlete who boxed, okay, but Kermit always stayed in good shape. And when Kermit had hand surgery, he was still in shape. He would run. He would do all the other things that he had to do that he couldn't do, because he couldn't punch a bag. He couldn't do.
But he
those
knew
things.
how to punch.
But he would use his other hand.
Right.
You know, so that's the one thing I loved about Kermit. And Kermit always maintained a healthy lifestyle as well. There was other factors that caused him from not going to become an undisputed champion.
Right.
You know, but
Life
but
of a boxer.
those are the things that are different with today's spoiled athletes.
Right.
Spoiled boxers, whatever the case.
Yeah,
may be.
and I totally agree with it 100%. But not taking anything away from today's fighters, because it still takes an athlete to crawl between those ropes and get in that square circle.
Without a doubt,
You know?
there's a lot of athletes. And we keep using the term athletes because they are athletes, but
Right.
there's a lot of boxers who are probably, honestly, more talented than boxers of 20 years ago.
Yes.
Okay.
More athletic for sure.
Yeah, but they
Yeah.
lack that hard-nosed discipline, that tough, gritty. They don't have that tough grittiness like the boxers of yesterday.
Well, now I'm going to ask you this. Now that you brought that up, because that makes a good point. Do you think, because coming from you, all right, from being in the sport and knowing what it took to get there and knowing what it takes to get a fighter there, because you was a fighter and a trainer, now promoter, do you think that a lot of the downfall for the fighters now are coming from being trained by fighters or trainers who've never been in the ring? Me, myself, personally think that if you're going to train, if you're going to have any sort of notion of going forward on what to tell a fighter, you have to have been in there.
Yeah. There's an exception to the rule. There's some trainers that never stepped in the ring before.
True. True.
But they have enough common sense and enough knowledge to make those adjustments and do certain things. I heard Angelo Dundee.
Angelo Dundee never did.
But they were
Emmanuel
creative
Stewart.
enough to make things work.
Right.
But there's a lot of, look, anybody can be a boxing coach today. Throw a towel over your shoulder, put a little Vaseline on your hand.
Right.
A good friend of mine, Joe Pastore, always uses that as a joke. But, you can always, anybody, and then you're listed a trainer, okay?
Right.
There's a lot of them right here in our city of Reading, okay?
Right.
That are trainers but don't know the left hook from a fish hook,
Right.
And it's the God's honest truth.
I
And
believe it.
I'm not calling any of them out, but there are some of them right here,
Right.
And so there's a lot that takes place, and so it's very important, and people don't realize, look, you heard that saying, the blind leading the blind, right?
Correct.
But when you have a young kid that comes into a gym and they're already blind to not knowing, they
Right.
don't have the understanding. So when you have someone else who's telling them how to do something, that person doesn't really know how to do it, they're going to listen because they believe.
Right.
Okay, and I've seen it over and over and over again. But when you have somebody who's telling them how to do it the right way, that's the difference.
Correct.
Okay? There's a lot of people that, I wish there was like some type of challenges sometimes where you could take the same athlete that walks into your gym, give them two different trainers,
Yes.
and see who can go farther with that same athlete.
Yes.
That same.
That would be awesome.
Oh.
That could be something we could work on.
I'll
what I'm saying?
tell
We
you
could
what,
do that.
I would love that challenge.
That could be a game show. That could be a reality show.
Challenge because I'm a stickler for teaching the right,
Yes.
proper
Fundamentals.
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 Okay?
Yes.
And not many of these guys are.
Right.
You know?
And I've seen coaches who have come in and they've taken athletes and they've taken them to, the top, but it's only because of the athlete. Because you can be a B-side coach, but you have a world-class athlete and you can take them all the way to the top. It's not because you know what you're doing as a coach, it's because your athlete picks up and adapts. Because your athlete not only listens to you, he studies on his own.
I'll give you an example. Floyd Mayweather,
Yes.
one of the most talented fighters of all time, right? When Floyd was at the top of his game, when Roger Mayweather got sick or whatever, if Floyd asked you to work his corner for a fight, Floyd will go out there and still win that fight.
Yes.
And
Without question.
guess who he will make look good? He'd make you look good.
Yes.
Right? So that's the point basically of how you're saying it.
Right.
But what happens when you have an athlete that don't have the ability of a Floyd Mayweather, that is just learning?
Right.
And you have that same athlete, if you had two identical athletes that had the same ability, but had two different coaches, which coach is going to train that fighter and take him to the next level better?
The one with the best fundamentals.
Exactly.
Without question.
And that's the difference.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And that's what people fail to realize. They'll take them to a lot of amateur fights, they do this, they do that. And yeah, the more you're around it, the more you eventually get these wins and you learn. But learning the proper fundamentals from day one
Right.
is the most important thing.
Right. And then speaking of fundamentals, and I know mine, and I'll reveal it once I asked you, going into a gym, you got a green athlete, he or she is definitely an athlete. You can look at them and tell that, whatever they do, they're going to be successful at it. When you walk into a gym and you want to go over the fundamentals, what is one of the first fundamentals you're going to tell a fighter? As soon as you walk in, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to concentrate on.
To me, it's always footwork.
Okay.
It's always the footwork. You got to
Yes.
put them on the line. You got to make sure they have good balance, good fundamentals, and they have a good stance. Okay, because when it's all said and done, they need that. They need that that good foundation. And then from there, you have the jab and how to throw the jab properly, how to step with the jab, how to step over, how to throw the right hand, how to do those things. And I guarantee you, there's a lot of these gyms aren't putting fighters on the lines and keeping them on the line for a long period. I used to keep
Hand pads.
I used to keep fighters. Yeah, I used to keep fighters in the mirror on the line for like minimum 2 to 3 months
Yeah.
before they even get off the line. They're seeing everybody else hit the heavy bag, and they're like, "Man, when can I hit the heavy bag?"
When you
Not
learn
yet.
how.
When you learn how to stand right, you learn how to throw your punches right,
Yes.
when you learn all this, when you learn to take these steps.
Yes.
And so those were the things that are lost.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's
There's
a
a
lost
lost
art.
art.
Yeah, lost art.
And I'll give you an example. There's been, in all the years I've seen a lot of athletes come through the gym. And you could be a phenomenal athlete, but lack the mental toughness.
Correct.
Okay? And I've seen lots of them. And
Yes.
I've seen a lot of them. And then what you have to do with that athlete who has all the ability, athletic ability, but they lack this here,
Mental, yes.
you have to work on that part.
Uh-huh.
And people don't know how to do that.
But
You have to build confidence in
Well-
that athlete.
You have to talk your fighter through all situations.
You have to be a psychologist.
Yes.
You have to be a big brother.
Yes.
You have to be, or big sister.
Right.
Okay. And you have to you have to be that mentor for them as well, and that takes them through it. That takes them to the next level.
Yeah, and you just have to, and that's one of the things that I think that has gotten so far away from the sport is that a lot of fighters, you lose fights, even on the amateur level, because when they get back to the corner, their trainers do not know how to talk them through or do not know how to motivate them to get to the next level. And we'll get into that too, because we were talking about the fight that just happened. We'll get into that a little bit later because it's something that I want to say, and just go ahead and say it now. God bless to Shadeja Green for standing in there and being tough. So I wanted to throw that in there. But I've seen so many fighters lose a fight because they get out and they get outworked by someone that they should dominate, but yet they go back to the corner and their trainer do not know how to talk them through that fight. They do not know how to
Or their
correct.
trainer doesn't know how to make changes.
Yes, they don't know how to adjust. They don't. And I've seen it happen over and over and over again to great
A lot of
fighters.
these trainers become cheerleaders.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Instead of true coaches.
Yeah. When you come back to the corner, if I come back to your corner and you say, "What are you doing? Why aren't you, throwing punches?" Immediately after that fight, I'm gonna go ahead and promise you, you're probably fired. I'm probably gonna find someone else, and you probably just receive your last check from me.
Yeah, right.
we're gonna.
I mean, look at Deontay Wilder and Mark Breland.
Yes.
Mark Breland stopped the fight on him, and then Deontay didn't want him to stop it, so Deontay fired him.
Right.
And it was probably the right thing that Mark Breland did to save him for another day. But, you know, as the fighter, who ultimately the fighters are the boss.
Yes.
Ultimately,
In
they're
the
the
business,
boss. You
yes.
know? But when it comes to and as a coach, you also have to say, hey, if I get fired for doing the right thing, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I got fired for doing the right thing.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's the stance that Mark Breland took when he got fired from Deontay Wilder for that. But those are the things that take place, you know. And like I said, I've seen lots of them over the years that come through, from natural athletes to, I'll use one. I'll throw my son Travis under the bus because it's easier for me to throw my own son under the bus instead of somebody else. I can say all different things about Kermit, Tarver Sims, Rob Calloway, I've seen Rockman, all those other great fighters I've trained, but you know, I'll do Travis. When Travis started boxing, Travis was just, his first fight he had at the PAL here in Reading. Didn't train, he was smoking cigarettes, running around, trained somewhat, but not enough. And he won the fight.
Right.
But Travis always used to say to me, what did my dad see in me? What did you see in me, Dad? And what I seen in Travis was the mental toughness.
Right.
The mental toughness and part of it was because of how I raised him. Part of it was because, I'll give you an example, there was a story on him, one day, you know, I'm always working,
Right.
a lot, I'm a workaholic. But,
When you're not working.
yeah, and so I was at work, and I get a call, and Travis calls me, he's 10 years old at the time, he's crying, Dad, so-and-so, they jumped me, and this and that. I said, oh, really? Okay. Kids down the street jumped him, there was about 6 kids or whatever jumped him. All the same age, they're all about
Right.
10, 12 years old,
Right.
So I'm like, okay, sure, I'll be right over. So I go over, he probably thinks Dad's come over to protect him and raise heck with the other kids. I get there, I go, oh, okay, who was it? He was like, oh, this and that, Oscar was the main one, this was the other one, this and that. I said, okay, you're gonna fight each one-on-one. Oscar, you first. Travis looked at me like, what? Right? So
I gotta fight all these guys again.
but that was an example of building that mental toughness in my
Right.
son. You know, not to
Right.
say, Dad's coming to bail you out, Dad's doing this. It was you have to learn this mental toughness.
Right.
And sure enough, when I think of all my fighters, Hasim Rockman, Kermit Cintron, ones who have become world champions, ones who have gone to the next level, even further than what Travis has, none of them had the mental toughness that Travis had.
Right.
None of them. Okay, Travis used to, you know, put it on Hasim Rockman. He put it on all. Travis, I've never seen, God's honest truth, I've never seen Travis take a butt whooping in the gym.
Right.
Never. You know,
He never backed
I've
down from
seen
anybody.
somebody maybe get the slight edge on him in boxing, but I've never seen him take a butt whooping.
Right.
And there's been plenty of times I've seen a lot of fighters take butt whoopings, right?
Right.
But he's always, and then that mental toughness, and I use that example, the mental toughness, because I took him and taught him how to fight. I took
Right.
and taught him the skill level. Travis is one of the only fighters around in this area, or even in world class, as a heavyweight that could switch from southpaw to orthodox, okay?
Okay.
As fluent as he could. Travis could fight a whole fight southpaw, he could fight a whole fight orthodox. Not many fighters could do that, especially in heavyweight
Yeah,
division.
especially heavyweights.
So he was one that could do that and did it fluently, you
Right.
know? But that was part of me teaching him those things.
Right.
It's a lost art, it
Yes.
really is.
Yeah.
Coaching and teaching is a lost art.
Yeah. Now, so going back to and moving over to the promoter side of it, because I know you know athletes and you know talent when you see it. Now, when you have a fighter and you know that they're going to be good and you want to move them, all right, how do you match them up? Because I don't want to say, a tomato can or a journeyman, but you want to put them in there making that transition from amateur to pro because they get one extra round. And you want to nurture them through. So let's talk about getting them started from amateurs to the pros, walking them through. When do they start getting and elevating in, talent? When do you put them in there with someone that's a little bit tougher, and when do you put them into those 10-round fights? So,
There's
a competition.
There's a fine line there because
Right.
you have to think about how good of an amateur career did they have. Okay.
Okay.
I followed one of the best matchmakers in the world, in my opinion, is Brad Goodman, and he's done a heck of a job. He's a nut case when it comes to studying fights and knowing fighters. And,
Most of us in this game.
yeah, and but you know, I followed what he's done, and they took a fighter, and I'll use an example like Kelly Pavlik, who had like 2 left feet, was a good amateur, but they made him even a better pro.
Yes, they did.
And by putting him in the right fights, and so part of it is honestly knowing your athlete, knowing your boxer. Okay, I remember we would put certain fighters in front of Kermit so he would learn. I would put certain fighters in front of Travis so he would learn. Okay, so there were certain guys that you put in front of your fighter. I'll never forget Travis's. I want to say it might have been his 4th fight. I was doing a show at the Santander Arena. It was May 11th, same day. May 12th. I'm sorry. A day after his son was born, after his first son ever.
Okay.
After little Travis was born, and so he was up all night in the hospital with it, the whole bit, and here I remember Top Rank was interested in Travis. And I remember calling Brad Goodman up about the fighter I got for him. This guy's name was David Cleese, just tough, rough guy from Ohio.
Just rugged.
And I asked Brad about him. Brad said, "Marshall, I won't match it up." He said, "I won't make that match." He said, "That's too tough of a fight." He said, "That's too much of a scary fight."
Right.
He said, "The kid's tough, this and that." I said, "Ah, man, I already got the contract back. I got this." I said, "I'm going with it because I believe Travis can do it."
Right.
Sure enough, Travis fought exceptionally well, in spite of not sleeping all night because of having his son
Right.
and all that. But the guy basically quit on the stool. You know, he thought it was over he thought it was only a 4-rounder when it was a 6-rounder, and basically stayed on the stool for an extra minute. Like, he was just done. And then Travis ended up winning the fight in a 6-round decision it was. But you know, I came out, I was right in the end. But the bottom line is you have to know your athlete, you have to know your fighter,
Right.
know what makes them tick, know where their weaknesses and their struggles and their strengths are.
Right.
Okay. And you use the word tomato can for the first fight, and I know exactly what you mean, but you want to get them a soft touch for their first fight.
Right.
To see where they're at.
Right.
Some athletes didn't have the big amateur career. Give you an example, Julian Gonzalez didn't have a big amateur career, so I made his first couple fights even softer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you're building on them, you're learning, you're letting them learn, not because they didn't learn enough in the amateurs, they're learning on the job.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So if you have a big amateur career, you can move them along a little faster, because I truly believe that they miss their window of opportunity if you don't move them within the right time.
Right.
Like, for instance, Yuri Cedeno, 14-0, 12 knockouts. Okay, if he kept getting fed soft touches, he's not going to grow.
Correct.
Okay, because he's already had all the tough fights he can in the amateurs.
Correct.
You know, by being in the Olympics, the whole bit. Same with Latifo Burlington. You can't give these fighters soft touches,
Right.
because it's going to hurt them more than it would help them.
Right.
So you have to put the right fights in them. So you have to basically know your athlete,
Right.
and then depending on how they do in that fight, a fighter from Germany, a promoter from Germany, years ago, about 20 years ago, told me that he said he says, like going up to the second floor, you take a step. If you're successful in that first step, you take the second step, take the third step, and if you struggle in that third or fourth or fifth step, take a step back, reevaluate things, and
Okay.
then go back and stepping up again. You
Right.
know, and so it's almost like that with picking and choosing the right opponents for your fight.
For your fighters.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and that, it makes a lot of sense, because, you know, like you said, not only, you know, are you looking out for the health and safety of your fighter, but you're looking out for your investment. You know what I mean? And
Without a doubt.
bottom line is that, and a lot of people, that if you don't understand the fight sport and the business side of it, it's a business. And when you're working with a fighter, you are working with the owner of that business, because they are the business and they own, you know, the business. So you actually are working for them. So what you want to do is put them in your best interest.
And then there's times, Reggie, where you can do all the work, you build the fighter up, and you're like, okay, he's ready for this step, he's ready for this next step, he's ready for that step, and then they don't do their work.
Right. Correct.
They didn't train hard enough.
Yes.
They didn't do the,
Cutting corners.
or because they've listened so much to their trainer like I said, the blind leading the blind. The trainer that doesn't know, the trainer that has been with them so far, but they fail to realize that the promoters who got them in this position,
Right.
okay, by putting the right fights in front of them. The promoter also made the trainer look better,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
But now when you're trying to step up and you have to do the extra things,
That the trainer didn't know.
the trainer doesn't know,
Right.
and it hurts you.
And and that brings me to a perfect, little insert here that I want to mention, because I've always thought that in the amateurs it's perfect. It's okay. You can have, a parent training you.
Mhm.
You can do that,
Yeah.
It's very few. It's very few. Unless, like you said, you have an athlete. You did it. You did it with Travis. When does it come to a point to where the parent has to step away? Because I look at, fighters now. I look at not Ryan Garcia, but Danny Garcia. His last fight that he had. I was so disappointed, on how that ended and how it went at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Haney, he's another one. His dad is a great PR person, but sometimes I think his dad gets him in over his head to where he's not ready as a fighter to take those next steps.
But let's be honest. What happens is a lot of fathers in the sport live through their son or their daughter in that position because they didn't get there themselves.
Correct.
So they're like, okay, let me get through here with my child. For me personally, it was hard for me to walk away from being Travis's trainer after 20 fights or whatever it was.
Right.
But I knew it was time because in 2013 when I had my open heart surgery, I knew that it was my way at that time to bring Brother Nazim in. And Brother Nazim always uses this as a joke. He always used to say that I faked it, that I never really had heart surgery. I was just in the hospital just to do that because we were always good friends, you know what I mean? But he came through and he took over for Travis and Travis would tell you today, he learned a lot from Brother Nazim, but he felt like he learned the most from me. And Brother Nazim always said the same thing. He said, your dad taught you everything.
Yes.
He said, I'm just fine-tuning things now for you.
Polishing, yeah.
He says, your dad taught you to use this rifle or this M16 or this 45 or this or that. He said, you got so many tools, Travis, you just don't know which one to use and when to use it. I'm going to help you on when to use it and what to use,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And Brother Nazim was a great fit because things that I would tell Travis to do, he wouldn't do because it was coming from Dad.
Correct.
But things that Brother Nazim told him to do, he would want to do it even more.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I remember Brother Nazim would say to him, that's it, kid, you're done with the bag, you're done. And Travis would be like, no, I got two more. No, you're done, that's it. Where me, I tell him you got two more in the bag. He's like, what are you talking about? You're trying to kill me.
Yeah, I'm walking. I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
done. It's Dad. Yeah.
That's what the difference was with father son.
Right.
Until he trained with Brother Nazim for a while, and then towards the end he wanted me to come back and train him.
Right.
And at that time I was like, I was ready to have my foot out the door.
Right.
I mean, I was always there for him, of course, but that was the difference.
Right.
But you also, it's a fine line. But I watch guys, and unfortunately, one of my own faults is that I'm very critical of people, and
Right.
and not critical like saying they're trash or this or that, but I'm very critical because I think either that athlete or somebody needs more, and I wish I can give input. I love to teach, I love to give input,
Right.
and I even reached out to Steve Breadman and Derek James and that about us doing a podcast to talk about the differences between trainers.
Right.
Because I think it's really important that, and I think if it went off, if they did a weekly series or something, it would
That'd
go
be
off
excellent.
because you'd have so many young trainers watching and listening
Yes.
and learning to
Yes.
guys who have recognition in the sport.
Right.
Now they don't know me as much as a trainer because unless I tell them who I trained with the Hashim Rockman, Kermit Cintron,
Right.
and what I've done. But Steve has a good reputation as a trainer. Steve Breadman, Derek James has a great reputation
Right.
as a trainer. You got Freddie Roach. You got
But
you know,
in your
other-
defense, you coming up as a trainer, you didn't have the avenues that these guys have now with social media, because they're all
Well,
on social
that,
media
and we're in
now.
a small town of Reading, Pennsylvania.
Right,
Okay, compared
right.
to Dallas, Texas, or Las Vegas, or even Philadelphia.
Philadelphia,
you
yeah,
know? And
yeah.
that's the difference. I remember years ago, when I was training Julian Larillo, his promoter at the time, Alfredo Marchio said to me, "Marshall, why don't you go out to Vegas?" He said, "You'll really kill it out there as a trainer." I mean, I can't make the transition, you
Yeah.
know? And so that's what pretty much that was about. I just couldn't make the transition, but it was, you know, I mean, I trained here in Reading, PA, trained Hasim Rothman,
Right.
who was, you know, two-time heavyweight champion of
Says
the world.
something when they come to you in a little smaller
Exactly,
town, you know, they
Tarver
come to
Sims
you.
from Connecticut came to me, you know. I was supposed to train Dimitri Salita at one time. I was asked to train Antonio Margarito, you know, and they were the things that took place, and it just didn't materialize, you know.
Right.
But they were the things that took place throughout the years, and of course I love being a trainer, I love being a teacher,
Right.
and that's the difference with all of that. But so yeah, no, it's good. I think it would be great having a podcast, a weekly podcast on training.
I think that would be excellent. I think
Yeah.
that's something we need to look into.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
know, and I can try to reach out to Bradman and those guys
Yeah.
and try to get in touch with them, even Bozy
Yeah.
down there in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and talk to
And
him, 'cause
there's
he's-
you know there's a lot of old time training. When I say old time, like guys like even Breadman and Bozy,
Yeah.
that aren't going to be around anymore.
That's what I mean.
The new generation coming up has to learn, but they all, you know, with social media, people are watching social media. They see the fast mitt work, the fancy mitt work, all that. The foundation of teaching is gone.
Yes.
It really is.
It is. It's a lost art, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to sit down. And there will be a part 2, 3, 4 to this. Sitting down, talking to the greats, talking to the Hall of Famers such as yourself on trying to rejuvenate, trying to rekindle that lost art of the sport, because you see the guys out there now, and all they want to do is showcase their hand speed. But you can do that for 30 seconds. You're not going to do that in a fight.
Not
You know
for-
what I
not
mean?
for- not for 30 minutes.
Not for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You're not going to do that. So why do it? And I was telling some guys the other day, because shadow boxing to me, and when we was talking about the fundamentals of boxing, I agree with everything that you was talking about with the footwork and being on the line and stuff like that. But I also wanted to add conditioning. I wanted to add conditioning in there, because I can teach you how to punch, but if you can only give me 3 or 4 punches, then why am I teaching you how to punch? 3 or 4 punches, I take that back. That's a double-edged sword. 3 or 4 punches can win a fight. 1 punch can win a fight if you land the right punch, but you got to know how to punch.
Correct.
You got to know how to deliver it. And so if you don't know how to deliver it, and later on in the rounds, if you don't have the wind to deliver it, it does no good.
Shadow boxing is important. though,
Shadow
Reggie.
boxing is very important.
But you have to
Yes.
learn how to shadow box first.
Correct. Yes,
Okay?
that's another
And that's
reason.
why I put guys on the line first, so they have that basic fundamental of their footwork. They learn how to throw the jab, the right hand, the left hook, the right uppercut. They learn how to throw those shots.
Right.
And then when they're in there, now they have to go and shadow box and master it, and they have to use their imagination, and they have to be creative while they're in the ring, and they have to think about who they're fighting, what they're fighting. I used to tell guys to imagine you're fighting Floyd Mayweather. How are you going to
Yes.
handle it? As your shadow boxing.
I'm so glad you said that, because you had mentioned that on social media, because I like what you're doing now with King's Promotions, and we'll get to that. I'll tell you where you can find it if you don't already know. King Promotions on all social media. You can go in there, because he puts up little clips of how important is shadow boxing. The other one you put up the other day, clinching is more than just clinching. What is a 50-50? Excuse me, what is a 50-50 fight? Those things, is actually bringing back the thinking side of boxing, because boxing is like chess.
It is.
You going against a pawn, or you going against a rook, you going against another king. When you're in there, you always have to stay 4 or 5 moves ahead of your opponent.
Without a doubt.
And that what you're bringing back to the sport, and what you're bringing back to social media, is getting those young trainers, those young fighters to think. And I like that. And I think that's something going forward that, we need to do more of, and throw those questions out there and see who can give I want to say a pronounced, answer for, what it is. It's not a right or wrong answer, but it's one of those answers that, you can learn from.
Correct.
And I'd like to see more of that. And I like, what you're doing now on this side of King's Promotions and promoting. I don't know when you're coming back to Pennsylvania to do a show. I know we've talked about it off camera.
We don't know yet. We're still working on it.
Yeah, and so I won't bring that up. But I do want to talk about, and this will be the last thing because we'll come back with a part 2, is because anytime you climb between those ropes, there is a possibility of not coming out the same. So I want to talk about, and touch a little bit on the danger of the sport, not to scare the kids away or scare the parents and their kids away from the sport, but talk about the danger. And I want to talk about the Shadacia Green incident where I noticed in the 5th round where her motor neurons, because normally watching her fight, as the fight goes, she increased without punch output. In this fight, it seems like not only did her out punch decrease, but her mobility stopped, her footwork stopped, her head movement stopped. So let's talk about what you've seen over the years, being as deep into the sport as you have.
Well, as you know, I was at the fight, and
Yeah.
so I saw Shadacia slow down as well, but I never was really real high on Shadacia.
Right.
Anyway, no disrespect to her, but I just wasn't real high on Shadacia Green to begin with. But I was high on Lonnie Daniels.
Right.
Because I saw Lonnie Daniels. I was high on Lonnie Daniels because Lonnie Daniels' attitude was a win-win attitude and just a happy-go-lucky attitude, and so
Is
when
that
you
a
walk
smiling assassin?
when you walk into a fight being happy, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
You can take shots differently. You're not affected by the crowd. You're not affected by things around you, and so I'm high on Lonnie Daniels. Period.
Right.
And I was there firsthand when she fought Carissa Shields as well.
Right.
And so I knew that Shadacia was going to have her hands full.
Right.
That's the fight that I wanted to see that night more than anything.
Right.
And I thought Shadacia, she had a close fight with Savannah Marshall. It could have went to Savannah Marshall. I actually thought Savannah Marshall won that fight, but either way, it is what it is. But we don't know what happened to Shadacia. We really don't. All we know is what's been posted on social media
Right.
from her. But if she had a brain bleed, hopefully she heals from that, and that she's okay, and she takes her health more serious than having to worry about getting back in the ring first.
Correct. Correct.
But what happens in situations as far as the fighter getting hurt, and I think it all begins with not taking good care of yourself.
Right.
Period. You have to be healthy. You have to be. I mean, look at guys like Mayweather and Bernard Hopkins. I want to just use those two.
Especially Bernard.
Because they were special types of fighters, and Bernard even more, like you said,
Right.
because they took great care of themselves.
Yeah.
Did you see any major injuries take place with Bernard? You
No.
see any major things happen with him? He protected himself. He crafted his art.
Sam Judah.
Yeah, guys like that. He took good care of defensively. He made sure that everything was on point, and you have to sharpen up your defense. And there again, that's one of those things that you gotta go back to. You gotta go back to the coaching.
Right.
How much did the coach teach you defense?
Right.
How much did the coach make sure that you're moving well? Some fighters won't let their hands go because they're afraid to get hit,
Correct.
because they weren't taught
Too much defense. Yes.
They weren't taught defense, period,
Right.
And why? Because the coach didn't know how to teach them, period.
Goes back to coaching, like
So,
you said.
yeah, and so that's the difference, and so as far as Shadacia, I don't know what happened, but I did see her fall off. I'm not gonna say she lost the fight because of that.
Right.
She was getting beat,
It-
from round 2 on,
Right.
in my opinion. Lonnie Daniels, did her thing, but as far as fighters getting hurt and injured, you see some tragic things take place, but most of them are opponents that are coming in.
Right.
The opponents that are coming in to these fights are coming in without training, without really taking their their craft serious, and they end up getting hurt,
Yeah.
you know, and they're too tough for their own good. And they stand there and they take shots after shots after shots, and then next thing you know, they end up with a brain bleed, or they're in a coma or something else that happens.
Some
So-
sort of injury,
Yeah,
injury
so-
that,
so-
yeah.
So it's important, you know,
Right.
and I think, you know, I think being defensively minded, teaching a fighter great defense, and secondly, having their condition helps prevent the majority of that.
Right, and that's one of the things I was gonna say, is being in shape and being in top condition can help you through a lot of that. And like you said, a lot of your injuries come from when you're broken down, not broken down physically, but broken down mentally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when you are getting hit with numerous of shots, and you're getting hit with the same shot over and over again, that mentally breaks you down. And I think that's one of the things that was happening to Shadesha that night of the fight, that she kept getting hit with those body shots, and then she brought it upstairs. And she just didn't know how to adapt, nor did, like we spoke before, her corner know how to
Make the adjustment.
make the adjustment. And I think it overwhelmed her, along with being on that big stage. Not saying that, you know, the injury is not, you know, that injury, because like I said before, I want to wish her well, and I want to wish her a pace and speedy recovery. And at that point, if that is the case, because like you said, that's all we can go by. She does have a brain bleed. Should she consider retirement at this point, for the safety of her?
Yeah, that's for her to decide. Personally, I don't think she'll ever be the same.
Right,
That's
that's
my
what I'm
personal
thinking,
opinion,
yes.
but,
The fear is always gonna be there.
yeah, the fear, if she truly has a brain bleed,
Right,
that, and just the fear of the embarrassment of getting knocked out and taken out on a stretcher as well.
right,
I mean, that's hard to come back from.
yes.
It really
yeah.
is, so,
A lot of people don't think so, but,
yeah, I do. I think it's hard to come back from.
yeah.
You know, mentally, you have to be tough, you have to be built differently, you
Yeah.
know? You
Yeah.
really do, you know? So I think that's the key, but, you know, but if you notice, fighters that get hurt, and when I say hurt, seriously hurt, are those that 9 times out of 10, they're opponents.
Yes,
99 out of 100, they're opponents.
right.
They're coming in and didn't
Right.
take their training serious.
And they're in it for the money.
And not just their conditioning or
Right.
their training, but they also, you know, don't have the proper defense either.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
And it all comes back to
Comes
the
back,
training.
that's right, that's right.
Oh.
Falls back on you, the trainer.
Right, exactly. Well, Marshall, I want to thank you once again for taking this opportunity to come in on 36 Minutes to Victory. It's always a pleasure sitting down talking to you.
Thank you.
I want to get together and try to collaborate on a few things. Like you said, if we can get all these trainers together, these 4 trainers
Yeah.
here on the East Coast,
Mhm.
and let's just sit down and talk about, you know, boxing. Let's sit down and talk about, you know, some of the greats and
That's
the
right.
way it has been and the way it is now. You know, I can't thank you enough once again. Thank you once again.
Thank you,
Hey.
appreciate it.
And